were two people. A man by the name of Willard. He was mostly a portraiture artist. He was hired by the Great Northern Railway to paint pictures of these last of the buffalo days, lived the old way of life. And they were some of the same people that you see in the photos that were photographed by a man whose last name was Heilman. So he documented them by portraits. They made calendars, they made playing cards and promotional items. And he photographed many of these people, White Calf, Fur Drattler, all of them that were being painted by Willard were being photographed by Heilman. And then, of course, there was a couple other photographers that were documenting these people, and they were the ones that were going up to the park and camping in the summertime.
That's where most pictures were taken. These were circulated around. Some were put on postcards. Of course, a lot of them ended up in photo studios, you know.
They hired them to greet the trains, drive people around in cars. To set up a teepee encampment behind the big hotel in East Glacier Park so that the tourists could come by and look at the Indians. In some ways, very humiliating just to satisfy the curiosity of the traveler.
Well, there were teepee camps all over back in there. They had a regular village, and the tourists would go right back there and visit with them. That was the way a lot of the tourists were able to learn a little bit about the Blackfeet. They liked that because they were able to wear their moccasins, you know, and dress up in their regalia. This was a way for them to live the life that they enjoyed living. One of the people involved in it was Theodore Lastar. He was kind of ahead of it at that time. You can find his picture in just about every studio. James Hill on the railroad, he's the one that promoted the tourism for Glacier National Park. This was a way tourism was using the Blackfeet people. Hill took a lot of the old Indian people back, you know, to Chicago, one of those big cities, and introduced them to the people, and then brought them back. And then, of course, the tourists the following summer wanted to continue talking with a lot of the Indians. And this was the way they promoted tourism in this part of the country.
So they're painting the pictures of people, taking photographs of the people. They're having the people up at the park. The Blackfeet were in Glacier Park before James Hill wanted it to be one of his draws for his tourist attractions. So all of these things are going on. In the meanwhile, the Blackfeet on the reservation are starving in a terrible economic condition.
Willard Schultz, he was a writer from back east that came out here around 1888. He lived among the Blackfeet, and he learned the language very quickly, and he could speak it very fluently. He spent about 15 to 20 years with the Blackfeet. He married a Blackfeet woman. Schultz wrote a lot of stories. One of the better-known books that he's written is called My Life as an Indian. And it pretty much tells the history and culture of the Blackfeet Indian people in this area. He was a very well-known writer, and he left the reservation for some years. And eventually he came back, and he died. They buried him right under a buffalo jump on the Two Medicine River. That's where his gravesite is. That's the history of Willard Schultz, book writer, author on the Blackfeet in particular. Judith Whitecaps was a very known Blackfeet among the Plains Indian tribe. In fact, he was known by several tribes, not only Blackfeet. Very famous Blackfeet, very famous warrior. He was a celebrity among the Blackfeet simply because he was so well known. In fact, his profile, several chiefs of the Sioux and Cheyenne, and Two Guns was one of the chiefs that was close to that Buffalo Nickel profile. Her name was Daisy North, and she was Pagan. The white men named her Princess Dawn Mist, but that wasn't her real name. Her real name was Daisy North. She was raved over by tourists to the Glacier National Park as one of the most beautiful Indian maidens. Around 1913, she was offered a position as a telephone operator at a big hotel in the park, so she accepted it. She heard there was going to be a suffrage pageant at Washington of that year when she was hired to be a telephone operator, so she wanted to go. She talked to her dad about it. They wanted her to march in a parade, so he gave his permission, and she was kind of a prominent figure in that parade. That's what the newspapers back east wrote. They kind of printed pictures of her, and she became famous almost overnight. They took her to Spokane to an Indian powwow up there to show her off. Daisy North married Bill Gillum. Bill and Daisy had 5 sons who served in World War II. That's who that postcard is about. In 1916, I believe that's the time they had Glacier Park taking pictures of some of the prominent leaders of that time. His name was Big Moon. They called him Jack Big Moon. That picture was taken in a studio in Browning. He was married to yellow petrified rock. About that time that picture was taken, he was about 67 years old. He was a Blackfeet warrior. In 1900, he went on one of the last war trails before the Indians started being at peace with each other. He went on a horse race among the Sioux and Crees. The story goes like this. Somewhere down close to the Sweetgrass Hills, along the Missouri River, there was a Sioux and Cree camp. The Sioux and Cree horses were picnicked near the camp. Big Moon and 2 of his friends went into the camp and cut the horses loose, took them up across the river, and then the Sioux party found out about the horses and chased them. One of the Sioux chiefs was killed by Big Moon, and his horse was shot out from under him, so Big Moon jumped on the back of the horse with one of his friends, and they rode double. When they crossed the river with their horses, they gave up on them because they had too far of a head start. So what happened is the horses that they took Big One got off and doubled with the other rider that picked him up and caught one of the horses they just took. They made it back to their camp safely. And this is a short story of some of these exploits. He had a robe that had his war record painted on, you know. It was in his family and they all died off. So it was taken by the Smithsonian. Harold Topknot. He was probably about 70 years old in 1920. It was kind of hard to really get their ages because they didn't have a written language and dates were never kept. But as close as they figure, he was about 70. He was one of the old-time warriors that lived in the Buffalo days. According to him and Lazy Boy, another warrior, went on a raid against the Crows on the Yellowstone. And on that raid, Harold Pup and Lazy Boy took 25 head of horse, then started to run toward the Yellowstone. And Lazy Boy dropped his gun and lost one of his leggings. When they lose a leg, it's tied to their belt and their breechcloth. Evidently, it come on tight, and they swam the river with their horses, and the leggings floated away. When they got to the other side, they found two Blackfeet bodies that had been killed by the Crows. The way Harold told it, of course, there's a lot of broken English in it. These two bodies give them an eerie feeling. So they traveled at night. They stayed hidden in the daytime. They lived only on berries and small rodents that they could catch or snare. It was hard to bring a whole bunch of horses out in the open like that, out on the plains. There ain't very many trees. So the Black Horse and the Horse, they net them together. The two leaders, they net together and kept them in a big brush where they couldn't be seen. They had to find all the hiding places they could, and they were good at reading terrain and rivers. They didn't have compasses. They just used the way the land lay, and that's where they were able to find their way back. It was pretty hard for them to keep a bunch of horses, and they had to be always on the move until they got back to their camp with their horse. And they made it back to camp. And that's pretty much what Harold Topknot was about. He was quite a warrior in his day. Everything in nature is sacred. In Native American culture, they show respect and honor to all living creatures. The Blackfeet people have a spiritual culture connection to the world around them, to Glacier National Park. They call this the backbone of the world. We have to take care of what is around. You have to listen to what it has to say. You listen to the wind blowing through the crevice of the rocks. This sort of songs come to the Indian people. You can actually hear songs coming from the mountain. When they sit around a powwow, all of a sudden the guy starts out on a song. Somebody says, "Hey, I never heard that song before. Where did it come from?" And he'd say, "From the spirits." What he meant by that is he was out meditating, and all of a sudden the song came to him. Maybe the wind blowing through the trees and the leaves rattling started originating in his mind. He was able to hum along and sing along, and all of a sudden a song just surfaced from that. Chief Oliver was a man who prayed for young warriors that went on vision quests. The vision quest could be explained in many different ways. It's a powerful spiritual life of most Plains Indians. if not all tribes, provides access to supernatural powers that can be found in sacred places. Our elders tell us that our creators in all things, rocks, mountains, trees, water, all of these, have a spirit. And because they have a spirit, mysteriously powers exist in them. And that's what Chief Oliver was known for. These reading quests, he prayed for the young warriors that wanted to go on these requests. Pray for them to have success, that they'd be able to dream of a power coming to them in the form of an animal. All powers come from the Creator. And it manifests itself in all kinds of different ways, like a strong wind, the sun, the moon, certain rocks, animals, and trees, sometimes a special mountain or special lake. They're sure that all of these contain powers of some kind. Other places might be taboo or dangerous, like grave sites. These places have bad spirits. If you don't behave in a normal way, or don't pray, or leave an offering, the power can harm you. And Chief Oliver was known for that, being able to tell the young warriors certain places to go to find their spiritual helper. You know, I always tell young people, there is no known security in our lives in the wilderness. A forest fire or war could put man back to savagery. And that's one of the reasons why Indian people were so spiritual and religious. And that's important to know. When the railroad came through here, they wondered how it got on through their lands because no one ever told them about it. At that time, they were all swept up and taken back east. And of course, they were eating good, riding train, and this was something new to them. Remember, these people were plains, you know, they lived on the plains. And to have something like this happen to them, it was kind of astonishing to them, you know. They didn't know what to think of it.
No, it didn't help us at all. Focus is on Glacier National Park when people come here. Being in the tourism business, I can tell you that that's where most of the visitors go. They don't stop at the reservation. They go up into the park. We have over 50% unemployment.
We still wear the same type of clothing. Designs are pretty much the same. With change, the people are losing interest in their culture. And we've lost a lot of it. And it's up to us elders to try to keep it intact. That's what I do. Tell the young people, you know, we have a unique culture. We have people who want to know about our culture. And we don't have the people to tell them about it because they don't know nothing about it. You know how to dance. You know how to sing. You know how to talk the language. But where did it all originate? They don't know none of this. You have to feel the land you're walking over to see it, to live with it. There is a difference. Many look but don't see. But Indian people, we hear with our eyes, nose, hands. We use all five senses when we're in the wilderness. We don't miss out on nothing. And that's why we're connected to this land. My uncle used to tell us, Native Americans out there on the plains may not have reading or math skills to learn, but he had the alphabet and calculations of the wilderness and plains around him. And this could involve 1,000 signs of any combination of which he must act upon in order that he must triumph and live.